Now let me get rid of that dummy title output and let's work on the overall syntax we're using here. Thus far, we're storing this array we're getting back in input state. And we can absolutely do that, but it means that we have to use input state 0 if we want to get the values, and input state 1 if we want to get the function to update the values. Of course, we can do that, but it's a bit of a hard to understand syntax. For example, that this is a function is not immediately obvious. We can use a modern JavaScript syntax to make that easier to understand. We can use a feature called array destructuring. How does it work? It allows you to pull elements out of an array and store them in separate variables. So here where you know that you get an array with exactly 2 elements, you can add square brackets on the left side of the equal sign. So by adding them on the left side, you're not using them to create a new array or anything like that. That would be the case if you use them on the right side. But instead, this now is a JavaScript syntax that allows you to pull elements out of that array and store them in variables. And you add as many variables here, variable names of your choice here, between the square brackets on the left side, as you have elements in the array. So here we have always exactly 2 elements. So we can add 2 values here with any names you want. The first element will be our data. So here that could be input state. And the second will be a function to update that data. Typically you name this set input state or set whatever you named your data because you're, well, setting this to a new value. You're not merging it, you're not updating it, you're overriding it. So you're setting some new data. So now we're using array destructuring, and our input state will be our data, and that will be the function to update the data. That's way easier to use now. We can use input state here without the 0 to work with our data. And we use set input state instead of input state 1 to update our data. And I think that's much easier to read and to understand than it was before, to be honest. Now, if we save that, it works just as before, but now we have a syntax that's way easier to understand. A side note, of course, this button still doesn't do anything because we haven't hooked up any logic, but we'll do that step by step. So this is the syntax we'll actually use, and the syntax you see in the official docs, you'll see throughout the rest of this course, and the syntax which is much better to use when working with the use state hook.